Okay, great. Thank you very much. Thank you, everybody, for joining us on this Tuesday morning, 9:30 a.m. in Yerushalayim. And of course, thank you to Ryan Mordechai for hosting this Torah class. I would like to share with you a very fundamental concept, short but important. So I'd like to share with you this important concept in Kabbalah, which will shed light on the subject which we're discussing now, the end of Perek Daled, the end of chapter 4 in Sha'ar, ha-Yichud We're talking about the idea of or versus keli, light versus vessel, container. So we've been talking quite a bit over the past few days that as far as the creation is concerned, there is a huge difference between the light and the energy and between the receiver. It needs some kind of filter or some kind of shield in order not to overwhelm them with the intensity of the light. If you look from the creator's perspective, lenses, then you will realize that there really is no difference between the light and the energy and the receiver, the keli, the one who receives, the vessel. And so I'd like to borrow from this analogy and move on to a similar subject, the Sphira in the Sha'ar and Atzilut, which is the highest spiritual world. You have 10 Sphirot. What are the Sphirot? The Sphirot, please listen closely, the Sphirot are a combination and kli of light and vessel. And so if we have, for example, chesed, kindness. So think of it as being clear water in a blue cup, blue glass, see-through cup. Before the water enters into the cup, the water is colorless. The water comes into the cup. If you look at the water through the blue cup, the water will seem to be clear, blue. So then if you pour the water out or you drink the water, the color of the water still remains colorless and clear. So when it comes to the chesed, you have or ha-Chesed and you have kli ha-Chesed, the light of kindness of Atzilut, the sphere of Atzilut, and you have the kli, the light which comes into the kli is pashut, is simple, similar to the example of the clear water which comes into the blue cup. Usually, almost across the Chassid talk about the quote-unquote Sphira of Chesed. We're talking about the way the or comes into the kli. But if you're going to differentiate for a second, it's hard. But if we'll differentiate between the or and the kli, the light and the vessel, it's going to be a color. The kli, the vessel is going to be chesed. The or doesn't have any color, any form, any identity. It's a pure light which comes into the kli, the vessel of chesed, of kindness. So from our perspective, from the receiver's perspective, from the creation's perspective, from perhaps the human being perspective, then there's a difference between the light and the kli, the or and the kli. But if we're going to go ahead and we're going to look at this from a godly perspective, from quote Hashem's perspective, please listen closely, the or and the kli are one. I know that it sounds difficult to understand, because for me it's also difficult to understand, because I'm also creation. But that doesn't change the fact. The underlining point that the Alter Rebbe is trying to explain over here in this chapter is that in essence, there is really no difference between the light, which is the energy, and the kli, which is the receiver. There is no difference. And therefore, when you look, and those are the words that we talked about a few days ago, and also yesterday, which we're going to reread today. Ihu v'chayo hichad, v'garmo hichad. The words, the Zohar. Ihu, he, HaKadosh Baruch Hu, the Chayohi and his life force, Chad, are one, like Echad. And Ihu v'garmo, he and his garments are also one, Chad, are one. So, it seems to be, from our perspective, that there's a difference between the Chayohi and the Garmohi, the light and the Kli, the vessel. You look at from Hashem's perspective, for example, like we talked for a few minutes about the difference, the quote-unquote difference between in the Sfirot, the light and the Keli, the light and the vessel of the different Sfirot and Atzilut, for example, Chesed, then the total, the bottom line is that it's not different. When you talk about said Atzilut, it's Ein Sof. It's limitless. So therefore, for us, it seems like it's a blue cup, but in essence, it's pure, it's colorless, it's clear. Also, the cup does not essentially over and change the seeming color of the water, because it's all one. Ihu v'chayo hichad, ihu v'garmo hichad. Okay, let's look at page 158. 158. We're going to reread the text of the square brackets, about 10 or 11 lines before the end of the chapter, and let's read along together. V'hine, and behold, b'chinat hatzimtzum v'haYichud, level of contracting and concealment of the life force that Hashem gives us, nikra b'shem kelim. It's called keli. Keli in plural is kelim, and that's vessels. V'ha'chayut atzmo nikra b'shem or, and the life force itself is called or. It's called light. Shemo shakli mechasel masha b'tocho, that just like vessel covers over what's inside of it. Kach b'chin tzimtzum, so too the love contracting mechaseh umastir haor v'ut Hashem. So to the contracting and the diluting of the intense light of Hashem covers over and hides the light and the life force, Hashafea, which pours down, showers upon us. It sort of contracts it, that it should be a little more restrained. And the vessels, hein ha'otiyot, they are letters, sheshorshan hey otiyot mansapach, that their root is the 5 letters, mem nun tzadik pei chaf, as we'll explain in a moment. So the root of the letters are these 5 letters. See, the explanation is as follows. The whole idea of a letter is to contract, is to limit. The meaning of the letter is limitless, but once you put it in a framework, whether you're talking about the literal diagram of the letter, or you're talking about the fact itself that it's a letter, that limits it. Like we said earlier, that two stones, quote unquote, can build 2 homes. Every letter is compared to a rock, is compared to a stone. especially when it comes to the letters of the alphabet, which are the holy letters, certainly in that scenario, we're talking about very loaded letters, entities. For example, like the example we talked about yesterday, but I want to repeat it because, example, the letter Aleph. Number one, Aleph means to teach, to learn. Alephcha, to learn. And also means in the word aluf, a superstar, someone that's really has really succeeded in something, in a competition or in some great accomplishment in a project that a person did. Aluf, a person can be considered aluf. One of the highest ranking officers in the IDF is called an aluf. And so those are two meanings of just the letter Aleph. Then if you look at how the Aleph is drawn, you have a Yud at the top, on the top right corner, a Yud at the bottom in the bottom left corner, and a line in the middle. The Alter Rebbe explained what the meaning of the Aleph is. And the Rebbe would often repeat this, seemingly in the same exact tone as the Alter Rebbe used to. The Rebbe took it very seriously, and sometimes, often, I don't think there was ever a time the Rebbe did not cry, but definitely it was emotional when he repeated this line from the Alter Rebbe. And I'm going to try to say it in Yiddish, and then I'll translate it. Apin telefon oben, und apin telefon unten, a kav biemza, dos is an Aleph. Or sometimes the Rebbe would say, ha-Yichud von oben, und ha-Yud von unten, und a kav inmitten, dos is an Aleph. Or sometimes the Rebbe would explain, so first of all to translate, that to have a little dot on top and a little dot on the bottom and a line in the middle, that's an Aleph. Or a little Yud. Yud is a tiny letter, little Yud on the top, a little Yud on the bottom, upside down Yud in the bottom left, and the line in the middle, that's an Aleph. Now what do these mean? So one interpretation is that Yud above is HaShem, represents HaShem. The Yud on the bottom is the neshama of a Jew, and the line in the middle is the Torah and mitzvot that connect us. Another similar interpretation is that the little Yud on the top is the neshama of a Jew. The little Yud on the bottom represents the final letter. So in addition to the fact that every letter has a framework and has a definition, how much more so when it comes to a final letter? Because the final letter says the word is till here. That's it. The word is cut off. A regular letter can either be at the beginning of the word, middle of the word, end of the word, but it can symbolize continuity. Final letter says this word is finished. There's no way to have a letter after that. So the concept of limitation with letters, is even stronger with the final letters. That's what Alter Rebbe says, that the source of limitation of all letters comes from Mantzapach. These 5 final letters. Let's continue 4 or 5 letters before the end of the chapter. Right in the beginning, Shehein. Shehein hei gvurot. Hamachalot umafridot hahevel v'hakol emotzot. These 5 letters of Mantzapach are the 5 letters of Vura, which divide and separate the hot air and the voice from the individual, from the mouth, with the 5 parts of the mouth which express, which bring out the words of the person. To create the 22 letters. Now let me just explain first before I go on that there's a concept in Kabbalah which is called the 5 gevurot, the 5 levels of restraint and severity. These are the source of gevurah, and we have often the concept of sweetening the gevurah. So, for example, on Sukkot, the day before Simchat Torah, Shoshana Rabbah, hit the ground with 5 willow branches that are tied together. And according to the Kabbalah, we are sweetening the 5 levels of Gevurah. So that's the objective, to bring sweetness and to lend the intensity of the Gevurah, of the strength, and to bring more blessing and shefa and inspiration to Am Yisrael. Now, so that's the 5 letters of Mansapach. It's not just limitation and Gevurah, but it's the source of Gevurah. That's the 5 letters. Then we have, now the Alter Rebbe is going to say the source of the 5 levels of Gevurah. Shoresh ha-Gevurah tu butzina de kardonita. Butzina means a light, like a beaming projector. This high level of butzina de kardonita is the source of the Gevurah. Shehi Gevurah ila'a, it's the highest level of Gevurah, the Atik Yomin. So even though the basic level of Sfirot are in Atzilut, that's the first level of Sfirot, nevertheless, we have so many levels higher than Atzilut, which is almost impossible to understand. So for example, the Keter, which is the crown above Atzilut, within Keter we have Chitzoniyat HaKeter and Pnimiyat HaKeter. I'm just throwing at you a bunch of words, so please take it for what, because there are countless ma'amarim explaining this. I'm just trying to give you the nutshell. So the chitzoniyat of Keter, the outer part of Keter is Arich. The inner part of Keter is Arich. And the inner part of At, even a much level, which is pretty much Atzmut, the HaShem. So, Butzina the Kardonita, within Atik, even though we don't have Sfirot, but at least the Shoresh, at least the source for the Sfirot, which come out later in Atzilut, are there. You can find the source for that even earlier. She Gevurah, which is a great level of Gevurah, the Atik of Atik. The Shoresh HaChasadim, who Gamkin Chesed Atik Yomen Keduli Odachin. And the source said is Chesed Atik Yomen, as it's known for the to those that are well versed in Kabbalah. The next chapter continues with the square brackets, but Bezrat HaShem will continue tomorrow. At this point, I want to thank you very much for joining us. And of course, if you want to guess where I am in Yerushalayim, good luck. I'm in Yerushalayim, but quite far from Rechavia. So I don't know if you want me to give it away. I'm actually on the way to an unveiling, unfortunately. That hopefully in the future I should only be going to Simchas, but that's what can I do? It's part of the job of being a rabbi, and a very great friend of ours lost her mother a year ago, and so we only want to share Simchas. And so tonight, please join us for our next class in Seriously Happy. In the course, please spread the word. I'm going to be sending out. By the way, from now on, we pretty much have the same standard room for Rechavia. The ID is very simple, 770. What else? And our phone number, 800-167 of these, without the 02. And so you should have that link. We'll send it out again before this evening. And look forward to seeing you then. And of course, Thursday night, Big Farbrengen with Rabbi Ephraim, head of JLI. That's going to be also 7:30, but it's going to be Thursday night. All the best. Have a great day. Thank you so much for joining us. Be well.